No, don't do. Hello and welcome to The Experience podcast. I am what I say I am, and what I say I am is a multi-dimensional spiritual being that's having a human experience. My name is Neil, and with me today is Christy as well as Dennis. I invite you both to introduce yourselves.
My name is Christy. I am here at the Earth-Waking Village with Neil and Dennis. I am one of the classroom leaders for a visionary leadership program, and I'm also a yoga instructor, a yoga therapist, and I also am the ambassador for our Tree of Life, where we value everyone's offerings with heart-centered offerings through our nature coin. I'm not sure if you have ever heard of our nature coin. I would imagine these guys brought it up, but nature coin is our reserve currency for the new earth. And so it's an opportunity to explore and play on the Tree of Life Central with those of us who are sharing our hearts. That's my offering to you today in my introduction.
And people call me Dennis. I'm a glob of bacteria swimming around in more bacteria, and this is the physical manifestation of that. So today we specifically wanted to speak on the divine masculine and the divine feminine and how that shows up. And what that looks like in daily life and in the physical realm as well as in the metaphysical. And we'll just kind of go from there. What does the divine masculine and the divine feminine, when you hear those words, like what comes through from you, Christy?
So first I would define the roles of masculine and feminine, meaning the masculine as a distinction is created to protect and support the feminine, and the feminine is designed to respect and honor the masculine, and that's in the form of pretty much anything. But if you think about it from a human perspective, ultimately, when we are in those spaces of the masculine holding the channels of protection and support, the feminine energy feels supported and can flow and respect the channels that the masculine is offering. So then taking it to the next level into that divine experience, almost everything that we look at that's masculine and feminine, it's a state of being where the masculine, divine masculine, creates the channels, offers channels for the feminine energy, the divine feminine energy to flow through. In the divine way, it's about creation. It's all about, in order to create something, to birth something, there is a channel. And we can look to nature, we can look to our physical bodies where we have these channels that is considered the masculine. And then there is the feminine, that is the energy that flows through the channel, and together in that space, they can birth something that is a creation, that can be light. And Dennis and I had spoke to this at some point, just this beautiful cyclical masculine feminine of a plant. You have a seed, which you have the outside, the exterior of the seed it holds the container, it's the channel, the space, and then within it is the intricacies of what that plant is going to be. And then that plant is able to sprout and blossom up, sprout up through the seed, using that channel of the external, the exterior surface. And then it creates this, what do you guys, seedling. So, and then the seedling shoots up and is life and is shooting up. It's a creation, and then it becomes a plant. And within that, you have the shoots, you have the form, the structure of if it's a tree, you have the structure of the trunk, you have the structure of the branches. But inside of that, everything is flowing, is being nurtured and flowing, and then it's producing fruit. So you have the birthing and the creation of the fruit. And then you have however, you've got the container of the fruit. And when you open the fruit, then you have more seeds. And then you've got this whole cyclical process of masculine and feminine, in this one singular creation of a plant. And you can look around anywhere and see that process, that cyclical process. So we can speak to it in nature in that way. We can also speak to it in what happens if the masculine is unsupported. It's been called the toxic masculine or the unsupported masculine. What happens when that takes place, and the so-called dysfunctions that come out of that, or the feminine being unsupported or toxic as well. And so we can look at that. And then we can also look at the beauty of it, as we talked about, in the divinity of it all, when we are in a divine union in the human form, and how that all shows up. So mostly we'll talk about the humanness of all of this now that we've kind of defined that. Do either one of you have things that you want to add to that?
I'd love to speak to how there's natural law, and then there's man-made law. And man-made law is things that we just make up, and it's things that are put into place that just because there's a rule to follow doesn't say that this is how the world works. And with natural law, there's essentially like 7 hermetic principles that are really like natural laws. And one of these principles just occurs to be the principle of polarity. And when we're looking at the principle of polarity, there's like black and white, high and low, there's deep and shallow, there's masculine and feminine. And this essentially is a natural law in the plane of existence, on this 3D plane of existence that we're currently on. So I wanted to bring that into the picture and communicate that.
Yeah, that's the whole experience of duality. You've got the duality of the polarities, and then there's the non-duality that you didn't necessarily speak to, but made an inference of, is that's beyond. Once you step out of that polarity or duality, then beyond that is just we're all one. The energy, the fluidity that supports the duality.
And that would be on another plane of existence. So on this plane of existence, polarity is natural law on the 3rd dimensional plane of experience. And when you move into 4th density, 5th density, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, that's when you'll move into or you have the potential to progress into a non-dualistic, a non-polarity state. What I was speaking to was on this plane, polarity is a natural law.
So something that came up for me, were you complete, Neil?
Yes.
Something that came up for me, and this is from my mentor, Jonathan England. And I want to bring up, and if you want to learn more about Earthwaking Village and Jonathan England and what we're doing here in Costa Rica as we're manifesting heaven on earth, we'll put a link in the description on that. And what I'm speaking to is the word submit. And there's another element to the divine masculine and the divine feminine, where we when we submit and surrender to God as the divine masculine, now the divine feminine can submit also to the divine masculine. So there's this submission and surrender that happens as well. So I just want to add that as well.
And what are you submitting and surrendering?
The ego and anything that is not love, anything that is not peace, anything that is not harmony, and submitting the ego and surrendering the ego would look like, judgment. We can look at judgment. We can look at guilt, shame,
Conclusions.
greed. So those are some of the elements of what you were asking, Neil, that I see as we must give that up in order to, we don't have to do anything. And the experience of peace, love, and joy is in surrendering and submitting to God.
So in this divine union of divine masculine and divine feminine, the divine masculine surrenders to God, so submits to God in that allowing God or opening to the expression of God to create the channels. So the channels are created by God through the submission of the divine masculine. And then in that, then the divine feminine can submit to those channels. And so the divine feminine is that energy, it's that creative life force energy that needs a place to flow through. If there's no channel there to flow through, then it will either show up very chaotically and just kind of spew all out, or go flat. There's like no place to go, so it just disperses. So in order for any creation to happen, there is the channel through which the divine feminine flows. So divine masculine is, the divine masculine is that surrendering to allowing for God consciousness source to create the channels so that the divine feminine can flow through. Where the issues start to arise, especially in this human form of masculine and feminine, whether it's within you, yourself, your own inner balance of masculine and feminine, or being out of balance, or if you're in partnership, not necessarily romantic partnership, but any type of partnership, there's a need for channels, and then there's the flow of creative energy. And if the masculine is pinching off, not allowing for the channel, either closing the channel off or not having any channels whatsoever, then again, the feminine energy has no place to flow, or is stopped, and therefore has to figure out what to do. Either usually comes up looking very chaotic when it's actually pinched off. So when the masculine is not defined, the feminine will feel unsupported. And when the feminine is not respecting the masculine channels, it may butt up against the channels that the masculine is attempting to create and put in place. But if there is no respect for those channels, then the masculine will be unsupported and will show up as angry and frustrated, and in this attempt to like give some sort of structure and form, but can't, because the feminine is fighting against. There's no respect, there's no balance, there's no harmony.
And how the feminine begins to respect the masculine is through poking at it. And it's going to find out if your channels are in place by sending some flow this way, sending some flow this way, sending some flow this way. And if the masculine gets triggered or angry from that, that just demonstrates the lack of channels that he has in place. So the feminine is constantly testing the masculine to see the amount of structure that the masculine has in place. And so that's a piece. And also, I'd like to speak to just some masculine traits. For example, the mind is masculine. Me speaking here is a masculine attribute. This is expression. Action is masculine. Action is getting something expressed out there. Action is masculine. Channels are masculine. And now that's masculine. Now going to feminine, emotion is feminine. Emotion is flow. It's energy in motion. Listening is feminine. So those are some feminine attributes. There's also attributes of feminine such as nurturing, caretaking. All of those are feminine qualities. So there's that, and I felt that was relevant.
Ideas is another way. So a feminine aspect would be an idea.
No.
You don't think?
I don't think, I feel. And thoughts are essentially a neutral state. They are neither masculine nor feminine. Thoughts are purely neutral. And it's when the emotion is added to the thought, which is the feminine, and then an action is taken on the thought, which is the masculine, that those are the feminine and the masculine, but the thought is inherently neutral.
So the inspiration from the thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was so yeah. So you have the thought, then there's the inspiration that brings it to allows it to begin to flow. That inspiration will create the flow, the fluidity of it, and then action. I would say more about that, like the difference between action and structure of being masculine.
And channels.
Like for an inspiration, an idea to begin to flow.
Action is required for flow to occur. And another piece I want to add is that us in these vessels are simultaneously masculine and feminine. So we have both qualities within our being. And can you re-ask the question?
The difference between a structure and an action, because I would almost think that an action might actually be the birth of life, where there's something before action that might be like a structure. So you've got the inspired idea,
okay,
that might flow through a structure, and then with the two combination, the action potentially could be the creation, the birth of the two coming together. So and I might, and I'm not sure, so that's why I'm
can you, yes, I love it, that was all relevant. Can you define a specific question?
So what would be the difference? How do you see the difference? Like you're speaking to action as masculine.
Correct.
And I'm asking what would be the distinction between action and a structure? So I'm seeing action as a little differently. So what would be your distinction, like the distinction there between structure and action?
Yes. Structure is a channel. Structure is the hose that the water flows through. Structure is the canyon that a river navigates. Structure is, it's like if you create a list of things to accomplish during the day, that's a structure that you can then flow through that list and accomplish goals. The action is not the structure. The structure is the thing in place. So the structure is masculine, the flow is feminine. And this now brings us to the Trinity. And the Trinity shows up in Egyptian culture. The Trinity shows up in Muslim culture, as well as Buddhism, as well as Christianity. And what the Trinity is, and this is in response to your question, Christie, the Trinity is essentially the Father, which is the creator, which is the mind. So the Father is the mind, which is masculine. So you have your mind, that's the masculine attribute. And then you have the sacred feminine, which is spirit, which is emotion. And what the father does, what the mind does, is it marries the emotion. So the mind marries the emotion, and then when those two marry, a male child is produced. It's always a male child. And this male child is the behavior, is the action that occurs from the marrying of the mind and the emotion. And the mind is not the thoughts. The mind is purely mind. And actually the first Hermetic principle is that all is mind. So when you have your mind marry the emotion, so you have something, you have a thought, and you bring it into your mind, and then you marry that with an emotion, with a feeling, a behavior results from the thought and the emotion combination. And that combination, that marrying, that coming together produces this male child, which is the behavior and the action that is produced from the marrying of the thought and the marrying of the emotion. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Well, you initially started out saying that the action was masculine.
It is masculine.
Well, yes, in the way that you say, and it's also the creation, it's the life, it's the fruit of the marriage of masculine and feminine.
Yes.
And then you're saying that it's always like, to continue the cycle, then that fruit is always masculine.
The behavior and the action is inherently masculine.
Say more about that.
For example, any behavior we have comes from, so any physical manifestation is first a thought. So anything that we see in this physical plane of existence was a thought before it became manifest physically. So because of that, because it was first a thought and then it married with the emotion, that then produces a behavior from the marriage, and that behavior is inherently male and masculine. And the behavior is essentially the action that is produced from marrying the mind and the emotion. So it has, and that's the thing, we in these physical vehicles have masculine and feminine attributes. It doesn't matter if we're a male or if we're a female, we have both male and female attributes. Those attributes are the mind and the emotion. We all have those. And when those marry, they produce a behavior and action. And an action is an expression of the marriage, and it's a masculine expression.
So I have a question, Neil. So if it is inspired behavior, would that be feminine?
Any behavior, any action is a masculine quality.
So what would be the feminine quality? Because I always, in the past, and I'm not going back into the past, but I always thought that the feminine is the inspiration. So if there's inspired behavior, like someone creating beautiful art, like that would be, or painting, that would be a feminine. But now I'm hearing from you that that's masculine by the behavior. So my question is, can you articulate and distinguish the difference between, I feel like there's somewhere in there, there's another distinction.
Yes, and the distinction that you're asking is related to the word inspiration. So what is inspiration? Inspiration is inherently an emotion, which is a feminine quality. Now, that feminine quality marries a thought in our mind, which then produces the behavior and the action of painting. The action of painting, the behavior, the action is a male quality, masculine. So there's every single behavior and action has both masculine and feminine qualities. It has both simultaneously, but the behavior and action itself is inherently a masculine quality.
I could see that where the end result, like going back to the nature example of you have the seed, then it produces the tree. Well, the tree, or the seedling, it takes form. So now we have form, we have structure, so that it's masculine. So there's always this masculine energy that is, or masculine structure in the physical, that is the birth. I mean, the process, the birthing process is the marrying of the two, the birthing process, but the result is always masculine, because we need the masculine channel first in order to marry again with that feminine flow of inspiration, of energy, to then keep that cycle going. So I see what you're speaking to, and what in the beauty of this is, let's see, I think you might have to push stop, or if you want to hand it to me. Yeah, there we go. So like a painting, so the painting is, the end result of the painting is the masculine form, but then you have beauty is in the eye of the beholder, where someone would come up and is inspired by the painting. That would be the feminine aspect.
The emotion
Yes, generated is that feminine aspect of, I guess, maybe being the receiver or being a recipient of the birthing of that creation that is now showing up masculine.
So this is real, and this is deep, and this is reality. This is not theoretical. This is what all the religions have been teaching for eons, for thousands of years. And it's this trinity of the mind, the emotion, that marry and produce a behavior and an action that is inherently a masculine quality. And natural law, essentially, it doesn't care about you. And when I speak to that, just because you're ignoring natural law still exists. For example, I'm going to use gravity for an example. So there's the person that's standing on the edge of a cliff, aware of gravity, so he chooses to just stay on the cliff and maybe have a campfire, enjoy the view, and then leave. And then there's the person that's ignoring the reality of gravity, and he says, gravity doesn't affect me, and he jumps off the cliff and dies. So my point is that natural law does not care inherently about you, about I. Natural law is occurring regardless of how, if we're in the knowledge of it or if we're in the ignorance of it. So right now, as a collective, the mass collective is in ignorance of natural law, and thus their power to manifest reality is essentially none. And natural law still is present. It's still in effect. So the way to manifest is essentially to receive knowledge, gain an understanding, and then take an action. And that is literally a recipe for manifestation, is knowledge, understanding, and action. And if you just have knowledge and understanding and no action, then it's like stagnant. So manifestation occurs when knowledge is applied through understanding it and applying it.
So knowledge would be the masculine structure. Understanding is the feminine flow, and then marrying the two together and taking an action based on that understanding of the knowledge then becomes the Trinity and the creation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Potentially. Let me feel into that.
So if there's no marriage, like if you don't do anything with the knowledge or anything with the understanding, and it's just there and there's no marriage of it, then nothing happens. So there's no creation, there's no creative process, there's no natural cycle of things for knowledge and understanding to come to fruition.
I do resonate with that. So this is delightful. This is reality. And this is literally the way that things occur in this physical manifestation. And another contributing factor is the environment that we're in, and very specifically the environment that we're in from age 1 to 6 years old. And because those are the formative years, and computers are a replica of the human brain and of what we're capable of. So in the formative years, essentially, we're formatting our brain, and it's being programmed during those years with the programs that are going to continue running until you change the program or change the environment, which essentially then begins to allow for reprogramming and changing the existing programs into upgraded, newer versions that have the potential to produce and manifest results that are beneficial to you and people around you.
Yeah, and those fruits that are beneficial, those you want to keep. And given that from the age of 0 to 6, we are, programming, have been programmed. And if for some reason you're getting fruits in your life, whatever that knowledge or that programming was, and as you marry that with an understanding or a lack of understanding, or your, I don't know, what would you say, consciousness, unconsciousness, or you're just needing to, whatever's that feminine energy that might be flowing through you that might not necessarily be from inspiration, you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, your fruits will look not so beneficial. They're being destructive, they're damaging your life, you're getting results in your life that you do not like. So with this understanding, changing the masculine, the programming, deprogram yourself from what isn't working, that programming that was no longer serving you, and reprogramming or counter-programming being that we're counter to the domestication. So you're reprogramming yourself in such a way to formulate structure to allow the feminine energy to flow to create those beneficial fruits that Neil was speaking to. So, and that's what we do here at Earthwaking, is we literally look at what is your domestication, what is your masculine channels, those formulations that you created from the age of 0 to 6 that are running your life and are producing fruits that you are no longer wanting. I mean, we've been, all of us here, having some massive breakthroughs in our ways of being that's just no longer serving us. And especially if you say that you want to create heaven on earth, there's, look at your fruit, and if you're not getting that, it's what can you do, what can you reprogram? And that's what we're all up to, is looking. And we're a collective here where we look, where we're observing and watching each other as if we're observing this painting, and we're looking at where would we like to change the painting, where would we like to add to the painting, where would we like to shift and create from the painting. And after placing those masculine channel structures in place, those new programs, then we can, from inspiration, from that understanding of what it is that we're, the fruit that we're wanting, we can allow that inspiration to flow through, and then we're now creating a life that we ultimately want. We are the creators to allow for the ultimate manifestation that's always been there to now reveal itself. Where before with these domesticated programs, these unconscious programs, which are masculine, were keeping us from what we want.
So these beneficial fruits that I've been hearing are, at least here at Earthwaking, they are miracles. And that's what happens when the divine feminine and the divine masculine, when we get to know what that looks like and we tap into those channels equals divine masculine. The channels are the divine masculine plus the inspiration of the divine feminine. The beneficial fruits of that are the miracles. And here at Earthwaking Village, we're seeing miracles happen moment by moment, like every single day. We're seeing transformation. We're seeing things that and by the way, miracles exist everywhere, and it the definition of a miracle is manifesting what's already there. And miracles are happening all around us. The only reason that you may not be seeing them is because you don't believe in them. So I invite you to start believing in miracles, and yeah.
Well, one of the things that inspired this conversation between me and Dennis the other day was looking to Neil. Like, Neil is a walking miracle. We've all experienced miracles. I mean, it's like we've all been experiencing them on a daily, but they show up more as miracles to me and Dennis because we were in dysfunction before, and then it's like, holy shit, transformation and miracle on the other side. And then we look to Neil doing such deep work and being a miracle moment by moment. I was like, what would be his recipe for the balance between the masculine and the feminine, the divine masculine and the feminine? So we started to consider that and look to that. And the two things that came up for us, which we referenced earlier, is that surrendering completely and submitting. And so, and surrendering, if you're looking at it from an old world perspective, the word submitting has a very negative connotation to it. People think of it as like, well, I'm not going to submit. I'm not going to submit to some, like, especially from a woman, I'm not going to submit to a man. They could potentially abuse me, so I will not do that. Or they've been programmed, me, myself specifically, have been programmed to be independent, an independent woman. My mom wanted to make sure that I never submitted to a man ever, and she wanted me to be a very independent woman. So, and I know many women about my age are experiencing that as well. So I saw that as a formula in the surrender and submission. And I'd like to hear from Neil a little bit more as we go into this conversation.
I want to speak to what you brought up about women not wanting to submit to men. That is the physical and spiritual manifestation of the toxic feminine. Because then what occurs is then the feminine becomes over masculine. And it's the toxic feminine because it's an over pendulation to the masculine side. Like we both have masculine and feminine within us, but the toxic feminine over pendulates to the masculine, and that can show up in the masculine as over pendulating to the feminine, and toxic masculine can also show up as over pendulating and being just masculine. So any over pendulation is an imbalance, and recognizing that we have both of these qualities and balancing those qualities is what allows for us to flow as well as generate structure and to manifest in this physical plane. I was feeling into what you spoke to, and so we can have a belief system for miracles, and this is also what Dennis spoke to, but if your program is still a shit program, if you still have a program from 1 to 6 year old that is running the show, it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, your program is manifesting your reality. So we manifest our reality based on our subconscious belief systems. So it doesn't matter what you want or what you believe, what your belief systems are. If your programs are still shit, then that is shit is going to be manifested. Now, if your programs are optimal, if they're at an amazing condition, what you'll be manifesting is optimal, amazing conditions. So now speaking to what you spoke to, Christie, is I had some shit programs. I from 1 to 6 years old, I had things programmed into me that were not reality. They were belief systems, they were truths, they were perceptions and opinions that weren't based in reality. And I started to learn this, and as I learned this, I also started to come into knowledge of reality. And knowledge is what's required to reprogram ourselves. And this is what reprograms, we have the potential to reprogram our being to manifest positive impact. So I had shit programs. They showed up in shit manifestations in my life, and Christie has not seen those shit manifestations. She's only seen me as I've been here. And prior to here, I had multiple shit experiences that I don't speak to that often. And my point is, I was having fruits manifested in my life from shit programs that were in my subconscious from 1 to 6 years old. But then when I began to learn knowledge of reality and how reality actually works, and that we're manifesting our entire experience with our subconscious belief system, I started to become aware of how important it was to reprogram this computer, this mind, this being, this emotion. All of it required reprogramming. And I basically did the MK Ultra project on myself. And I MK Ultra'd myself to reprogram my subconscious programming and to upload new programs such as 528 hertz music, positive affirmations. I started saying affirmations every single day. I started exercising, and that exercise started manifesting new emotional patterns in my body, which were new programs. And so my recipe is, first of all, gain knowledge, because that's the only way you're able to reprogram is when you actually have a knowledge of reality, and then reprogram your being, and that includes your mind, your emotions, your thoughts, and which then translates into your actions and behavior. And then also at a certain level, as you reprogram, there's two ways that we want things. We want things from our ego, or we want things based on what God wants. And initially, I was accomplishing things and wanting things based on what my ego wanted. And I was reprogramming my mind based on what my ego felt it wanted to manifest. And I've recently moved into a space, and as you reprogram yourself enough, it becomes so obvious, and as you learn more knowledge, that can only go so far. And because the ego is perceptions, truths, and specifically your truth. There's the truth, and then there's your truth. So the ego is your truth, your perception, your opinion, and your belief system, which is bullshit. BS. So that's the ego. And that is what I started reprogramming my being for, was based on my egoic wants. And that led me to a place where I felt clear enough to where my ego, I started to become so clear of what my ego was doing and how it was going about. I started to recognize it. I started actually recognizing what it was, which I just literally shared what it is with you, those 4 things. And then from there, I moved into a space of submission. And what the submission is submitting my thoughts, submitting my emotion, and submitting, and through those 2, which is the masculine and feminine, I've submission to that to God. And what that then does is affect my behavior and my action. And I no longer want or need anything, because I am and express everything. Like I am nothing and everything at the same time. And so because of that, because I no longer, prior I wanted something. Now I no longer want something. And now I've submissioned my thoughts and emotions to God, and now God can use this vessel to express what the entire collective mission of humanity is, which is to manifest heaven on earth. And this idea of manifesting heaven on earth has been around for thousands of years as well. The Egyptians taught this also. So this has been around for years and decades and centuries. So there's the mission, and that's God's mission, which is manifesting heaven on earth. And then when we submission to the mission, I now have a part to play in the mission, which is my submission. Cue the air horn. That's my submission, is assisting in co-creating God's ultimate mission, which is manifesting heaven on earth. So, and now, because I don't want anything, I no longer have any expectation of the outcome. Actually, what is occurring now is that I have more of what I could have ever imagined. Higher emotional states, higher thought patterns, and essentially, usually no thought patterns, like an empty space in the mind space, and more so just a feeling in the body. And when I speak, what needs to be spoken is expressed. And when I don't speak, there's no chatter going on in the mind. And so that was a really long answer to your question, Christie. And it's all relevant, and I have confidence and faith that you felt the relevance of what I expressed.
Yeah, so a couple things that came up for me was, well, first of all, okay, so one, defining reality, which can, for most of us, that can be very challenging. Like you're saying, the more that you had a knowledge of reality, then you were able to surrender to that knowledge of reality. That's what I heard. So like if he just gave us a beautiful formula to manifesting heaven on earth, and surrendering to reality. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that, but, and ultimately what I heard reality is God's will. And, you know, so when we give up our will, what the ego wants, and surrender to God's will, that creates that channel. And then us completely submitting to the channel, the will of God, just miracles, beauty, heaven on earth is birth. And so that is what I heard Neil say. And so, is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate. And it's only possible when we release our egoic tendencies and submit our thoughts and our emotions to a higher purpose. You can call it God, you can call it the Genesis, the generative principle. This is actually the 8th Hermetic principle, is the generative principle, and is represented in there's a triangle, and then there's an upside down triangle, and in the middle of those two, there's a giant G, and it looks like that. And that G is essentially is God also. God is the generative principle. It's the principle that encapsulates all 7 of the other natural laws.
That's a whole podcast in and of itself. Have you done that yet?
Coming right up.
So, will you speak more to reality? Because that was a key component to this formula, to this recipe of how to be in complete divine masculine, feminine, the divine union within or with any being or in any experience. I heard knowledge of reality, and then submitting the emotions, the thoughts, the emotions. So will you speak more? Yeah.
I have something about reality. Reality is very simple. It's love. And the ego is very complicated. So anything that is not love is not reality.
That's a belief system. And just because we believe that does not constitute reality. The laws of reality still are in effect regardless of our belief system. Vibration is a law of reality also. And it's another Hermetic principle. And there's actually 7 Hermetic principles. And vibration, essentially, what your state of vibration is at, you'll attract similar situations into your life that are at a match for that. So for example, if you're vibrating at a love frequency, you'll attract situations into your life that are loving and expressing love and drawing out the love that's within you, as well as allowing you to receive it. So there's a difference between belief systems, which are BS, bullshit, and actual reality, natural law, or universal law, or God's law.
So how would you define reality? Like what would you, how would you speak to reality? Like if you had to, in very simple terms, like, because I mean, even me, I'm wanting to have an understanding of.
I've already spoke to a few of them. So there's the principle of polarity, there's the principle of vibration, there's the principle of cause and effect, there's the principle, did I speak to vibration?
Yeah. So how does it show up? What does it look like? So that, like, something tangible that somebody can go, oh, that's reality, that's not.
Yes. So there's 7 principles to it, and then essentially it's what works to manifest in physical reality or in physical experience. So reality could be looked at as what works given what you're trying to accomplish in the physical dimension experience. That's essentially the simplest way that I can express it, because it's generally what wouldn't be reality is there. So let's say that there's a flood in where you're at, like there's a tsunami. So let's say you're in Florida and there's forecast for a tsunami, and you are aware of it, you choose not to take an action on it, and you just speak that God has got you. and that's a belief system. And so you're just in your house saying God has got you, and there's a tsunami on the way, forecasted for the exact area you're at. And now water starts to fill the streets. It starts to rain, and like cars start floating. And now you actually go outside of your house, you go onto the roof, and you're in the tsunami, and you say God's got you. And that's a belief system, and it's BS, it's bullshit. And you're taking actions based on your belief system. So you're saying God's got you, and this tsunami is occurring all around you. At this point, you're still in a comfortable, relaxed position, even with wind around you and rain. But now you're on the roof of your house, and there's a guy on a boat comes by your house, and he asks if you would, like assistance on getting off your house and getting out of the storm, possibly going to a different area. And you say, no, I don't require assistance. God's got me. And then the water is continuing to rise. It's now like cooling around your feet on the roof of your house. And a helicopter shows up, and the helicopter asks if you want assistance. Like, it's a miracle that this helicopter is even flying in the tsunami. But you just say no to the helicopter. You say God's got me. And the tsunami continues, and your physical vehicle dies in the tsunami. And now you're experiencing God. Now you're actually, God did have you, and now you're in the dimension of God. And God asks you, essentially, like, he asked, how come you didn't take an action when I sent you a boat? And he asked, how come you didn't take an action when I sent you a helicopter? So your belief system was God has got you, and it's a belief system, but he also sent these things to assist you. So if you have faith and you don't take the action, if you have knowledge of reality, but you don't take the action on reality, then that's dead. And faith without works is dead. Knowledge without taking action, reality without taking action on reality is dead. And it's not able to produce fruit, which is the physical manifestation of a positive experience in your external environment.
The reality is, if you don't get out of there, you're going to drown. And so that you have that knowledge, and you also have this idea, this belief that God's got your back, but you didn't marry reality with
action.
That, and therefore you die. So that was really good. I like how to break through in that one. I was like, oh, okay, because we're all like, oh, it's God's will, and God's got my back. And we live in this duality. We live in the physical, and the physical, we've got the natural laws, as Neil was talking about. So if you don't marry your inspiration of your faith in God with reality, you're dead, basically. So if you want to have fruits, and you want to create life, and you want to see manifestation in this physical form, then you got to get in touch with reality as well. And reality is those laws of nature.
And if you want the fruit of shit experiences, if you want the fruit of just things not working out, if you want the fruit of just having, like, going to a job which is just over broke, if you want to have the experience of nothing working out, of having to work really hard, a simple recipe for that is to just ignore reality. You don't even need to look at reality. You can literally just ignore it, and you'll have the fruit of working a job. You'll have the fruit of working really hard. You'll have the fruit of shit experiences. But if you actually want to manifest heaven on earth, it's of it's essential to face reality.
So it sounds like reality, that knowledge of reality is the physical channel, is a channel, the masculine channel. And then the faith in God would be that faith, that emotion, that belief, or is the flow, is the feminine energy. And when you marry the two, and then you take action from that.
And the behavior and action is produced from the marrying of the thought and the emotion, which is the Trinity. It's the Holy Trinity. It's the marrying of the thought, actually not the thought, it's the marrying of the mind, which is in, the thought is in the mind, but it's the marrying of the mind with an emotional feeling. So feeling a certain way, and then a behavior and an action is produced through that.
So yeah, so in this conversation, anything that you want to?
I was just, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, in this conversation of the masculine and the feminine, and like looking for a recipe to marry, or to be in harmony with masculine and feminine, and we're calling it divine union, like that, where it's not just the physical form of masculine and feminine, it's that spiritual form of masculine, or spiritual experience of masculine and feminine, creating a divine union through the will of God, through the surrendering to God. So we've got the knowledge of reality as a very key point, surrendering to that knowledge of reality, that in the physical form, it is what it is. And taking, then whatever your belief is, whether it be faith in God, or if you have egoic beliefs that are flowing through there, that will create your fruit, that will create your action.
I'm here to say beliefs are irrelevant.
Well, I guess beliefs would, well, I'm thinking of,
Because go for it, and then I want to add something.
so a belief, let's say I am a child of God. That is actually reality, and it can also be
Right, but
a beautiful
belief is different than reality. I would call that a discernment. Discernment is you're a child of God.
Okay, so what I'm working through here is, so to produce fruits that you don't want, you either deny reality,
You ignore it,
and then,
which is what many people are doing.
yeah, and then there's the feminine energy. And so what is it about what feminine would, so inspiration, we know, is when you're feeling inspired, that could potentially create a beautiful fruit. And so a negative feminine energy that would produce a fruit or produce an action that is not beneficial. What would that, like I'm calling beneficial inspiration, not beneficial. I'm looking for a word, looking for a term to call it. What would you, either one of you like?
So I want to speak to the belief system, and then can you check mark that question, or do you?
I have something after that. I have some integrity to restore if we continue, so just
See?
Oh, wow, okay.
go ahead.
Excellent. So the belief system is inherently meaningless. And what the belief system has the potential to produce is an emotion. So the emotion does have meaning, and the emotion is the feminine quality. So if you can incorporate new belief systems that generate new emotions and new thoughts, then that has the potential to produce a new fruit. But the belief system is bullshit. You can have a bullshit belief system, but if the bullshit belief system produces a new thought and a new emotion. It's the marrying of the thought and the emotion that then produces the behavior and the action.
So, okay, so you just answered my question. So you've got the masculine channel, which would be the knowledge of reality. The feminine would be your emotion. So if you are emoting love and in the channel of reality, and you're standing in reality, then you're going to have some very beneficial fruits. If you are emoting sadness, fear, anger, shame, then you're going to produce fruits that are not beneficial, that are going to not be what you want. So did we get to it? It sounds like we got
I feel
to
that's complete.
that feminine aspect in a negative. Is the
Correct.
shame, is the emotion. So I appreciate that distinction of emotion
Right. And then
over beliefs.
and then on the positive attribute, it would be like peace, love, and connection, and oneness, and facing
Faith.
reality, like faith, cause and effect, but vibration, polarity. All of that would be positive attributes, which then incorporating that, you could produce thoughts based on that and feel emotions based on that to produce positive impact on your life, on the world around you, and on the collective as a whole. So Christie's information is in the chat. You'll find her email and phone number there if you want to reach out to her. She's a professional breakthrough coach. So if you actually want to begin to reprogram your subconscious mind, Christie is a great resource for that, as well as there's a link in the chat. And when I say the chat, it's the description in this case because it's on YouTube. There's also a link for virtual Earth Waking Village, as well as for Nature Coin and the Tree of Life. So all those links are in the description. And I love you. I honor you. I greatly appreciate you being here for this duration of time. Your time is of infinite value. There is no price tag that can be put on your time because it's literally the only thing you have on this physical plane of experience. And when you give your time to God, it becomes eternal, and even time disappears. So your time has infinite value. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you.